Welcome to Ringette Ontario's Team Talk, a social media series focused on connecting the Ringette community through conversations with players, coaches, officials, and sport leaders. This series is brought to you by See What She Can Do. See What She Can Do is a sport-loving community that celebrates active women of all backgrounds and capabilities and connects them to the people, stories, and local businesses they need to be active. Visit SeeWhatSheCanDo.com to explore stories of hope, resilience, adventure, and find the resources that inspire and keep you moving. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm PJ Kwong, and I'm your host for today's episode of Ringette Ontario's Team Talk, presented by See What She Can Do. In Salt Lake City in 2002. Now, she became the first Canadian athlete to successfully defend an Olympic gold medal in an individual event. So Catriona has since retired from speed skating, but is still involved in sport through community work, serving on boards and the like, and has worked as president and CEO of Sport Calgary since 2019. She's also served as the lead athlete mentor for Team Canada at the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics and has been named as Team Canada's chef de mission for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to be doing this. Please welcome Catriona Le May Doan.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to try not fangirl throughout this whole interview, but I'm pretty excited to be talking to you, I'll tell you.
Well, our paths have crossed at various times, so it's great to be crossing here.
And in various places, but we won't talk about that. That'll be a story for a different day. So listen, I want people to know a little bit more about you. People know you, of course, as an Olympic speed skater, but what they don't know is that you got your start in Ringette. Can you take me back to your first memory of being on the ice?
Okay, well, it's not a great memory. I don't remember. It was probably one of my most embarrassing times.
Right.
So when I first, my parents came straight from Scotland to Canada. So still to this day, they're in their 80s. They have never worn a pair of skates. I don't even remember where I discovered Ringette. So I was dancing at the time, and that was mainly our focus. It was actually a Russian dance studio and in Saskatoon. And so I was doing a lot of ballet. And I missed a lot of practices. So this would have probably been my fifth or sixth time on the ice. And I do remember it was a game. And I remember what I was wearing because then I got embarrassed about it. So I wore, okay, get ready, everybody. I was wearing jeans. And then my shin and knee pads were over top of my jeans and taped. And I'd maybe been to one or two practices because I'd missed a lot because of dance. And in this game, and this is what I will never forget, the ring was up in the air. So I took my stick and I'm like, let's see if I can stab the ring. Well, you can't do that. And the whistle blew and I went into the penalty box. And I remember skating by our bench and hearing a lot of the girls say, oh, that's the new girl. She hasn't been here much. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Anyways, I ended up playing for a number of years and loved it. But that was my first memory. And I feel like I need to phone my therapist now.
Well, it's a little bit of group therapy here, but honestly, it's 2021, it's COVID. We're all used to sharing these crazy stories. So obviously, there must have been some skills that you were able to take from those inauspicious occasions on the Ringette ice and translate them into the glory of speed skating. Can you run me by a couple of those?
Yeah, I am speaking to people who know and that Ringette builds great skaters. I have a daughter who's a Ringette player and a son who's a hockey player. And the hockey players do not like me saying it, but I will say it over and over again. Ringette builds the best skaters. So for sure, I had some good foundational technique, just good skating. And the thing is I'm really driven, and I'm more of an individual sport person as a kid, because I just want to be sort of in control of my own destiny. And I combined the two sports for a few years, and then I ended up continuing with the speed skating. But I love the fact that I can brag that Ringette made me the speed skater I am, or I was.
Do you know what? And I come from figure skating. So that whole agility, being able to go sort of from one direction to the next, that whole being able to think on your feet, that whole teamwork concept, those are all very, very valuable. You mentioned your daughter being in Ringette. So I want to sort of turn our attention a little bit to the fact that you're also on the board of the Canada Games Council, and Ringette is the hottest ticket at every Canada Games. So talk to me a little bit about the appeal of Ringette.
Yeah, I was a Canada Games athlete at 3 games, 2 winter, 1 summer. I've been media at Canada Games, and now vice chair of Canada Games Council. And, we have told people, we've told organizing committees. I was on the board for 2019, and we said, and again, a little bit of an exaggeration, put hockey in the little rink because you want the big rink for Ringette. Yeah. And, it's tough because a Canada Games is a massive entity that's created in 4 years, huge budget, so many athletes, so many sports, and TV is there as well. And you keep saying, you guys, you want to have the network showcase Ringette. As we expected in 2019 in Red Deer, it was in the little rink. There wasn't a ton of room for fans, and oh my goodness, you had to be there so early to try to get a ticket if you hadn't pre-bought one of the package tickets. And starting in 2015 at Prince George, the webcasting of Ringette still had the highest numbers. And so not only is it a fun sport to watch, and people who don't know it, once they see it, they're so shocked at the speed. It's fun to watch. It's fast. It's, incredible moves. But the fact is also that it's just, it's so entertaining, and, it's a tight-knit community. And that's what I love about it as well. So my daughter has been playing for 10 years and was at U19AA this year. Obviously with COVID, things have stopped. Yeah. But she came up a few times to Red Deer to watch, some of her coaches and friends playing at Canada Games. And, I'm so proud that it's at Canada Games and is truly the hottest ticket.
And you know what's so much fun? The fans are the best. Like, the fans are as good as at any sport, and loud. Loud.
There are some very loud parents in Ringette. All sports, but I think Ringette wins.
So when we're talking about fans and we're talking about sport, your first trip to the Olympic Games was 1992. 30 years ago, Catriona, you were probably almost prenatal at the time, but that's okay. It's a story for a different day. Can you tell me about the skills in sport and the different things at sport? You end up on the biggest stage in the world. How did you feel? What was that like? What sort of soft skills did you bring with you?
It's interesting because I went to 4 games. First games, 21 years old, just deer in the headlights. And really, it's okay to have those experiences. It's okay to be nervous. And trust me, I was nervous my entire career. I didn't deal well with the stress and the pressure. I never embraced that. But I think because there wasn't a ton of pressure for results, I was 14th at the games. That's where I wanted to be. It was great. All the games, just like any competition, like a national championship, a Canada Games, anything, every event has its own spirit. And so I have never tried to judge a games or its spirit on results. It influences a little bit, but for me, my first games again was just sort of like, my biggest memory is walking into the opening stadium, because the opening ceremony stadium, when you hear them announce Team Canada and you're walking with, your 300 new friends of sports. I mean, people you've never met in sports from across the country. It's an incredible feeling. But, it's throughout my entire career, and it's taken me probably 10 years since retirement to learn a lot of sort of those other skills of you talk about the confidence. That's been the toughest thing, of the perspective, of the values, of the hard work, the discipline, determination. I mean, what do athletes have to learn right now? Adaptability, resilience. Yeah. Those are things that we needed then. I think now more than ever, everybody needs those, especially those involved in sport during the pandemic.
When we talk about sports sort of in broad strokes, I know that in your own life, you've encouraged your kids to be sort of multi-sport participants. Think back to your own career as a younger person. What were the benefits of participating in a multitude of sports, especially during those very tricky adolescent years?
Yeah, I will always talk multi-sport, and I will always say, it's not just in your youth. Throughout your entire life, you should be multi-sport. And I'm going to say, as somebody who just turned 50 at Christmas, the reason that I don't have a nagging injury is because I did multi-sport. Because I did speed skating, I did dance, I did ringette, I did track and field in my 20s. So even after I'd gone to the 92 Olympics, my dream was to go to a Canada Games at track and field. So I spent 4 summers in the summer training for heptathlon and hurdles. And it's a different mental perspective. It's a different physical perspective as well. So I've always pushed that with my kids. Sports complement each other. And again, it's that different mental perspective. It's having different coaches and learning things, learning how a coach will say something, how you react to it, and how you take that. And so, I would continue to encourage everybody to always multi-sport, even multi-train, even, getting on a bike, going for a run, doing hill runs. There's all the different ways of doing things. And I think that's what the pandemic has actually taught us, is there's so many great ways to do it, to sort of be able to be adaptable and learn about the body movement and learn sort of that, almost that physical literacy, even in our teens and our adult years.
Well, and there are so many different ways to dice this apple. And, we've all had to adapt, absolutely. And one of the things that we're talking about today is that champion mindset and resiliency. So let's talk about a champion mindset. What does that actually mean to you?
Oh boy, wait, how long do we have? Because
lots of time.
Yeah. The thing is that I think, well, okay, I'm going to say the biggest thing is, why are you doing what you're doing?
Okay.
And I was recently asked it was actually a ski cross athlete. They were in Sweden a few weeks ago for World Championships. And I was just talking to them pre-World Championships. And one of the athletes said, do you have to fail in order to succeed? And I thought, ooh, very good question. And for me, I fell at my 94 games, games where I was ranked 5th in the world, devastating. But they said, do you have to fail to succeed? And I said, no, but it's about the perspective you bring. So the number one thing with a champion mindset is, why are you doing something? What are your values and what are you passionate about? Are you doing it because somebody has said, I want you to do this? Are you doing it because somebody said, I bet you can't do it? And you're somebody like me going, Or are you doing it because you're passionate about it and you're challenging yourself to see how good you can be? And so I think that's the number one thing, is you have to be driven. You can't have somebody sitting, you can have your bad days, but you can't have somebody sitting there every day saying, do this, do this, do this, because that's what's going to make you better. What's going to make you better? And so it's not just the physical side. It's not just the emotional, mental side. It's what you put in your body. It's, it's about how you live. And to me, the champion mindset is just about, again, why are you doing it? If you take away what you're doing and you still have those values, you are a champion. And there's so many examples. If I can tell one quick story, Jennifer Heil, she's a mogul athlete. So she won gold in 2006, and I was mentoring her a little bit going into 2010. She was the first day. So she was going to be possibly the second athlete to defend an individual gold medal. I was the first in 2002. And she competed, had a great run, won silver. So probably in the media and many people's eyes, she'd failed. And I talked to her 30 minutes after her performance, after her race. And I said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "I was as good as I could have been." She goes, "That was what I could do today. The other girl was just better." And to me, it was so profound because she was as good as she could be. And so when we talk about champion mindset, I think sometimes people think about the champion, but it's like the best, but it's your best. And sometimes the best and your best are the same thing, but sometimes they're not. And so again, that comes back to values. It comes back to, how do you view success? Did you succeed because you dominated? Great. Did you succeed because you overcame so much and you pushed yourself? And when I look at my career, what I'm most proud of is dealing with the pressure, dealing with, going into Salt Lake. And so that's what I'm most proud of. The races were good. They were not my best races. They were good enough.
Good enough. It's so interesting, as we're talking, and of course, I want to bring it back a little bit to Ringette, and you have the experience with Ringette, both yours and your daughter's. Is there a way, or is there a difference in the terms of champion mindset when it's you as a solo athlete or when we're talking about a team?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have known how to answer that, except that it depends on what platform. So I think I can answer it. And the reason I say that is for myself at an Olympics, I have one race. It's 37 seconds, one chance once every 4 years. And I got talking to Danielle Goyette, who was one of the women's hockey players, multiple time Olympic medalist. And in 2006, she was asked, there was some controversy about flag bearers. She was asked to carry the flag into the opening ceremony. And I had done it 4 years earlier in Salt Lake City. And again, the controversy had been because some individual sport athletes had been asked and they said, "No, we compete right away. We can't do it." And Danielle said, I can have a bad game. She goes, "I can have a bad shift. We have a round robin. I have other teammates that I can rely on." So the difference is that you can be off for a moment. You can be off for a game. You can be off for a shift. Does that change whether you're a champion or not, or the mindset? No, because we all have bad moments. But what sort of I'm saying is that, in an individual sport, in a sport where you don't have a round robin and you don't have playoffs, you just have one final and that's it. You can't make mistakes. You have to be on. That doesn't change the mindset. It's how you prepare and how you view it. And again, that sort of success mindset. But there is a difference for sure, a team sport to an individual sport when you're competing at that moment.
We've got a great question from Allison Elise, who wants to know the kind of effect that playing in a stadium that's huge, like the Olympics, and with that large of a crowd. And she goes on further to ask, what kind of effect does that have on your playing and the overall mental state during a game or during a race? How does that play into it?
Great question, because I one of the things that I talk to the ski cross athletes about, and if you've watched any of the sports that have been sort of on TV, especially within the bubble, the Olympic Paralympic sports that have been shown, some of the athletes are struggling because they don't have the crowds around them. Yep. And one of the ski cross athletes said, I'm struggling because I need that adrenaline. And I'm talking to them in Sweden, and I said, I'm envious, because I said, I wished I could have competed in empty stadiums, because sometimes for me, that energy was too much and I had to bring myself down. But for others, it pumps them up. So my favorite place where the crowd was really a part of it was in Holland. Now, understand that the Canada Games ringette, that's speed skating in Holland. Other than you have 10,000 drunk people in a stadium cheering for everybody. They don't just cheer for the Dutch people. They cheer for everybody.
Yep, they're great fans.
Yeah, great fans. And that's the thing. And that's what ringette has. And that is so good. But we have to find it within ourselves to get to that highest level without fans. And so what does that take? And it was a really good conversation I had with this ski cross athlete, because it's, well, what do you need to do to get hyped up? What is it? Where for myself, I had to calm myself down. And there's no right or wrong. And within a team, you will have the different athletes, respecting that everybody is different. And that's one of the toughest things. But, it is different. I loved Saturday morning training races. I was as good there as I was at a World Championships because the pressure was less. So how do you get to that level, crowd or no crowd? And this is something throughout this pandemic, and who knows next year, I believe we will be playing again, and I'll be playing Old Lady Ringette. Yeah. Not that we have fans. We usually have 2 or 3 people. But, how do you get that? Because even sometimes it's kind of fun to make a nice play and go, ooh, wonder if that person saw that. How do you get there without people watching?
Yeah, it's interesting. And for some people, the lack of noise or the amount of noise is different from normal. And for many athletes, different from normal means bad, and it can throw them off. It's very, very interesting. So if we were going to, we've got lots of young people who are listening in on this broadcast, lots of athletes who are trying to pursue their best goals. How does mindset influence success on and off the ice? And talk about it from your point of view.
Well, I think, again, we have to define success. And so I'd like to tell everybody a story about somebody who I would say would be a hero of mine. And so you think, okay, successful. This gentleman I met in 2002 at the opening ceremony in Salt Lake City. He was actually carrying the sign that said Canada. So he would be leading the team in. I would be behind him with the flag. Introduced myself. His name is Brian Maxwell. And I said, how'd you get in this position of carrying the sign for Canada? And he said, I'm an Olympian. I said, oh, great. For what country? And he said, for Canada. And he went on to tell me that he was a marathon runner, and he qualified for Team Canada for the 1980 Olympic Games. And that's the year Canada boycotted. Yep. So this gentleman, Brian, is standing in front of me, and he looked at me and he said, so this is it. It's 22 years later, and I finally get my chance to walk into the stadium with Team Canada. Then they called us, and I'm walking behind Brian, like just in awe that this gentleman who has waited 22 years to live out his dream of walking into an opening ceremony is walking right in front of me. He's not angry. He's not bitter. He's just like, I'm watching somebody live their dream. And he ended up marathon runner, super fit, healthy guy, but 8 years later, going out for a run, having a heart attack and passing away. And I had said, I want to find Brian because how is he the way he is? Like, I just want to learn from him. And, he just fascinated me. And so I never got my chance to talk to him. He succeeded in my mind because he was an Olympian. He qualified for the Olympic team. He got his chance to walk into the stadium. And so, just an example of that mindset, that attitude, that way of carrying yourself. To me, I've always thought about that over the last number of years and thought, I want to be more like Brian. I want to be somebody where people turn to and say, I want to be like that person. And so the mindset of a champion is, and the mindset to succeed is how do you define success? And again, it's about, you want to have these goals. You want to have these, far off distant goals. We all have them. Doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter if it's a sport or business, family, whatever it is. But then you need to break it down and say, what is it that I can do right now? And especially now during this weird time that we're in, what can you achieve that you can control? And there'll be some that we check the box and we say we did that well. And there'll be some that we fall just short. But again, that's not a failure. That's an adjustment. Okay, let's adapt. Okay, well, how can we turn that around? And so, the mindset is about continuing on. And that's how you will become a champion, because at the end of the day, you know what? I mean, I have them in wool socks. I have my medals here.
Ooh.
This is my Salt Lake City gold medal.
Oh, wow.
I don't take this with me when I go. And this, you know what? This is the Nagano gold. These don't define success. They define determination, dealing with adversity. When I fell in 94, dealing with pressure, dealing with doubt. Those are things that people would say that, well, a champion doesn't have that. Oh, yes, they do. It's how you deal with it day to day. And literally sometimes leading up to a race, second by second. Yes, I'm confident. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. It's exhausting. But that to me it's the battle. And it's, you know what? It is a battle. And you have to be willing to kind of put on that armor and fight.
And you have to be willing to understand that some days you're the windshield and some days you're the bug. And you just have to know which day it's going to be. Right?
I like that analogy.
That's my St. Patrick's Day gift to you. We have a great question from See What She Can Do. And See What She Can Do are the great people who are presenting this team talk today on Ringette, Ontario. They want to know what specific approaches would you recommend to athletes to make their efforts in practice and training turn into success on game day or when they're competing? Love that question.
Yes, great question. You know what I find, and I'm not saying everybody, but you know what? I've seen this in Ringette on my daughter's team. I've seen it in my son's hockey team. The key is when you get on the ice, you are ready. I would, in general, say that most teams start playing better 5 to 8 minutes into a game. Okay. Warm-ups are never intense enough. So when I look at our warm-ups that we used to do, we would do an off-ice warm-up and, jogging and gradually getting more and more, ending with sprints and excels. And then we would get on the ice. We would do the same thing on the ice. Then we would get off the ice. So I started 2 hours before my 37-second race. Then I would sharpen my skates. Then I would start the process all over again. So I find sometimes there's too much time done kind of congregating, standing around, that a game is intense and you need to get your body prepped. And you should feel in warm-up, you should feel at times tired. You should stimulate getting the lactic acid going. And I just think sometimes that part is ignored, and that is the easiest part to fix, so that when you're on the ice, when the whistle blows, you're on. It's not going to take you 5 minutes to get in and get sharp. No. You should be sharp and ready. And to me, it's warm-ups. 2 years ago, we did that with my daughter's team, and I was assistant coach. And so I kind of stood back and I finally said something, and then the head coach, she was just, super good with that. And we had 2 head coaches, and they were both really open. And I'll tell you, things changed for the team. It turned around because we weren't waiting 5 minutes to be ready. The girls were ready right then and there.
Being ready, preparation is everything. Listen, we've got a great fan on YouTube, Createx, who's talking about the Dutch speed skating fans, which we've already determined are super friendly and super fantastic and wear a lot of orange. That's all I'm going to say. I've been there. But there's a wonderful question I find about who's been your greatest opponent in speed skating? I've spoken to lots of athletes over the course of time, and many athletes feel that their greatest opponent in their sport is actually not the person that they're facing, but rather themselves. Tell me, both in solo and team sports, it's the same way. So what can you share with us about that?
Yeah, I was really fortunate that in sprint speed skating, and I think it's still that way, but I'm going to say my era, that's puts me in a really old age group. We were all really good friends, and we would go to the line and we would sort of tap each other and just say, have a good one. And it wasn't a token, have a good race because I hope I beat you. No, it was be great so that you push me and I hope I beat you because I'm going to have to be even better. So there was no animosity. Oh my goodness. It was like, I miss that. That's the only thing from competition that I truly, truly miss. But I was for sure my worst enemy. If anybody watches my 98 and 02 races or any time in that period of time, I wore dark glasses, and it wasn't because I wanted to look intimidating. That's what people think. It's because I didn't want people to see the fear in my eyes.
Oh,
I had doubt. And, it's whether it's just my nature, whether it's, female, it probably a combination of everything. The confidence was always the toughest thing for me. And I knew that my family was there regardless of my results, but I still struggled with it. And I, often still struggle with it. And I'm okay to say that because it's, and it's sometimes a battle and no rhyme or reason. But when I was racing, I just literally would continually had to find ways that I could deal with it. And it was about taking away the results. And when I talk about, having like far goals and then breaking them down, I had to do that within my race. So I would think too much about, what's my time going to be? And I would break it down to the first 100 meters, then the next, and literally try to take blocks. Because if this 100 meters wasn't great, well, then, then the corner, then the backstretch, then this corner, and then the final 100. So, you battle yourself constantly, and that's okay. It's not right. It's not wrong. Some people, teammates, other athletes, they might seem super confident. I'll tell you, a lot of athletes are really good actors. So I'm not saying take off your mask, but I'm saying it's okay if your mask at times is thicker or thinner.
That's so encouraging for people, because so many people, when they're looking down the road and they see what they deem to be somebody who's successful, they think that that person is somehow very different from them. And I'm finding more and more, the more that I interview people, the more I go along the road, people are much more the same than they are different. But here's an interesting question for you. Maintaining that champion mindset, once you've achieved your goal, or dare I say gold, how do you do it?
And this, people might understand this and it might take a while to understand. So these medals that I won, they were good races. And I said earlier, good enough. As a perfectionist, I was chasing the perfect race. The perfect race doesn't exist. I don't think the perfect performance exists in any sport. Perfect person doesn't exist. But I was always chasing that. So it was a tough situation because even a world record, the race was not perfect. So I achieved the goal, but I always kept looking. Okay, what's next? And even after Salt Lake City, I skated one more year and then retired. And then instantly I started with media. I mean, I had my daughter. I started media. I was in Athens, part of the CBC team, when my daughter was 3 months old. So I left for 3 weeks. So I was constantly kind of chasing. And I would say it probably took me 10 years to figure out that I didn't have the perfect race, that I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. And it was a little bit of I will never achieve it. So, that's a mindset that a lot of people have, and it's not wrong, because it's not wrong to be driven. I want people to understand, never, ever have anybody say, oh, you're a type A driven person. Say, yeah, great, I am. Embrace the fact that if you're driven, embrace the fact that you're, determined, and if you're a perfectionist, that's all okay. But again, it's the perspective. It's understanding that, celebrate the big victories, celebrate the small victories, celebrate the just abouts, because those are going to teach you how to get even farther. So, again, it's tough. Everybody thinks that, yay, this is like the perfect race. And yet, I think a lot of people are continually chasing.
You know what? That chase is exactly because sometimes not catching the goal. First off, I mean, I've seen lots of athletes over the course of time who are super talented, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. And then the puberty fairy hits and things change dramatically and they don't know what to do with it because they didn't experience that disappointment that helps build resiliency, which oddly enough is my next question. So I think you'll agree with me that COVID-19 has been just, I mean, who could have predicted it? And who could have predicted that we're still talking about it a year later? And the effect that it's had on our athletes has been very, very surprising in some ways, because it really has shown that many athletes have been able to sort of pivot to a point of resiliency. From your time as an athlete, were there occasions where you were able to turn adversity into that sense of resilience?
For sure. I mean, different situations. And, the only thing that right now that I sort of, the uncertainty perhaps that some athletes are looking at, and I'm talking on the Olympic, Paralympic level, is Salt Lake City for us was 5 months after 9/11. And I remember, on September 11th, we were supposed to go to Salt Lake City the next day. And then obviously flights are canceled, trips are canceled. And then we started realizing, the Olympics might be canceled. And understanding how to sort of pivot the thinking and how to pivot your goals, and then realizing it is going to happen. But the fact that the resilience that I had to build was probably the biggest time was after 94. And that was about after I'd fallen at the Olympic Games, whether I was going to continue to skate and whether I was going to commit 4 more years of 6 days a week, 11 months of the year to train for a 37-second race. Because if you look at the odds, they're probably, they're not in your favor. If you look at the number of athletes, to come from last to first. But the reason that I chose to continue was because I did not want to watch that race in front of my television and ask myself, could that have been me? And I think that's the resilience part, is that, regardless of a result, you need to give yourself that opportunity to see how great you're going to be. And so that's going to be, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you'll say, I was as good as I could be. And, it's overcoming that doubt. It's overcoming injuries. It's overcoming frustrations. It's overcoming, struggles, whether it's with teammates or family or coaches, whatever it might be. There's so many things that I think at the end of it, you don't look at the results. You look at what you've overcome. You look at, sort of what you've experienced, and you go, boy, I am, I've learned so much. I mean, I am the person I am today because of the stuff that I've had to go through, and I still learn. But being, having that resilience of the unknown and adapting. I mean, everybody today and the youth, it's not that I wish I was in this situation, but boy, this will be talked about, for decades. And when, when you're older and you'll say, yeah, guess what? Guess how I dealt with this. And people will go, oh, wow. And, you'll sort of say, yeah, that's pretty impressive of what I was capable of doing. And so we don't always realize it at the time, but it's a strength. And, just understand that I think everybody's stronger than they give themselves credit. And you don't always want to test it. But it's also courage, and resilience is about courage.
Speaking about courage, we can't get away from this conversation without talking about parents. You're a parent. I'm a parent. There are lots of parents out there who are listening, and many parents out there in the world are trying to force a champion mindset on their children. What kind of advice do you have for those parents? Mine, of course, is good luck with that. But what would you
don't force. Bad word. I'm the type of person that if my parents had forced anything, I would have turned around and walked and done the complete opposite. And yet people didn't know that was necessarily my personality, because, I was pretty quiet. I and I often remind, my daughter, I was not a cool kid in school, but I was driven. And so I just never wanted somebody to tell me what to do. And so I chose my path because my parents allowed me to choose within reason. And so parents, and I know now as a parent of teenagers, the hardest thing is to watch your kids competing. The hardest thing is to watch your kids struggle because you want to fix it. You don't want your kids to hurt at all. And so now I finally understand how difficult it was for my mom to sit through 4 Olympics to watch the good and the bad, and how stressful that was for her. But, guide, be there for advice, be there for support, and just love. But, if athletes and parents can actually have that conversation, and I hope they can, that's the best thing. But again, what's tough is because a lot of parents then are coaches, and it's a difficult situation, especially in a team atmosphere. But understand that sort of boundary side. But athletes, everybody needs a voice. So athletes need a voice, coaches need a voice, and parents need a voice as well. But those voices need to be respectful of each other. And so I think the best thing is when those voices can come together. And that's how, to me, the best seasons we've had, when I look at my kids as teams, but especially in the ringette side, they're much better than the way hockey deals with it. Having those conversations up front about these are our expectations from parents, from coaches, from athletes. And that's okay to have. And it's okay to have those boundaries. And when those lines are crossed, call everybody out on it. That's okay.
Calling everybody out is actually what we all need to do. I think that over the course of time, people have been afraid to do that, afraid that maybe their kid won't get picked for a team. Maybe, it's going to be reflected somehow in scoring, maybe in whatever. But truth of the matter is we all benefit as a society by all of us being accountable for the result. So I want to ask you a little bit, and I'm not the only one, because See What She Can Do has another question, which is great, which is feeding into my next question, which is winning isn't just about the medals. In your case, it's also about advocating. So I want to know, how has your role as president and CEO of Sport Calgary, how has that been able to shape the work that you're doing in sport?
Yeah, it's interesting. So Sport Calgary is our civic sport council. So there are various sport councils across the country. Ottawa has an incredible sport council. Every city kind of works differently. But, our role is to advocate for local sport, and understanding that not all sports fall under a provincial sport organization. So Ringette Ontario being the provincial sport organization, falling under the NSO of Ringette Canada. Some sports that we have as members, there's a Quidditch club. There's no provincial association. And so, advocating for sport, that's the biggest thing, because it's, you want this playground to podium mindset, that we want kids to start being active. We want that physical literacy. And then we want kids to be able to dream. So to be able to see Olympians, Paralympians, national team players, whatever sport it might be, to say, yeah, I want to do that. But again, you don't always necessarily get to that level. And even if you do, does that mean that you've won? No, it's a journey. There's no end. I'm continuing to do different things. I started playing, as I said, sort of old lady ringette, and I'm pretty darn fast to the ring, but oh my goodness, for the life of me, I can't raise a ring. And everybody's like, oh, well, I'm sure you can because you're really athletic. I can't raise a ring. It drives me crazy. I'm a D for sure. And then I just started playing hockey as well. And I love it because then it's, as a player, I'm really understanding now how different on the ice the sports are. But it's, it's about, I don't sort of get competitive to that point of, we have to win, but it's, against myself. But it's is the fact that sport is for life. And, it comes back to winning is about getting better. And it's about checking a box going, oh, I just did it. Like when I can raise a ring, I mean, my days are over because that's going to be a huge success. And now, and people keep saying, let me help you. And I'm not patient. So I know that I could eventually learn, but my goodness, it's a tough thing. But one of those things, and it sort of comes back to that last part we were talking about, is, a lot of people think that we win if we're better than somebody else. And it has to come back to ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to stop comparing each other. We need to stop judging other people. We need to stop judging ourselves. And so, you know what? You said it about being accountable for ourselves and accountable to each other. That's part of the winning part.
You know what? And when one person wins, we all win, really, when you think about it, as we sort of elevate each other. On March 8th, it was International Women's Day. And at Ringette, Ontario, we are celebrating all month long. I actually think we should celebrate all year long, but that's just my perspective. I'd like to know if you could please share a story with us about a woman who has been an inspiration to you, who has impacted your life in a positive way.
I mean, and a lot of people might pick their mom, and I'm going to pick my mom because my mom came to this country in 1963. She was a pharmacist by schooling, so successful, great university career. And so was offered a job. And at the time, my dad was given a 1-year professorship in Saskatoon. So my mom said, no, we're going back to Scotland. So she didn't take this job. Ended up having 3 girls. We all have Scottish names because we were all going to go back to Scotland. And I'm the youngest of 3. So never used her pharmacy. And when I entered grade 1 and we were in a full French, so a lycée curriculum, my mom didn't know French. And so she said, well, I better take some French classes so I can help the girls with their homework. So my mom ended up going back to school well into her 40s and becoming a French teacher with a very, very strong Scottish accent, never used her pharmacy. And I remember thinking, what an example that doesn't matter what age, you can choose a new career and you can, sort of go outside of what is the norm and do something. And when I look at her mom, so my gran, my mom was a menopause baby. So back in Scotland, my gran was one of 4 girls, all born in the 1800s, and they were all university educated. That wasn't normal. And so I think just the example that you don't have to conform. You can do things a little differently, and that's okay. And that's who I would say is constantly my role model, because I just turned 50 and I love what I'm doing and I love my job, but I keep looking ahead going, okay, what can I learn? Because I had to leave school because of sport. And so, what am I going to do when I grow up? I'm not sure.
Do you know what? You are the most amazing role model. I cannot thank you enough for joining us on Team Talk today, because the information that you've been willing to share with us, all of the stories, and the fact that you were willing to pull those medals out of socks and show them to us as well. I mean, you truly are an inspiration. Catriona Le May Doan, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope I get to chat with you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you. And to everybody out there, you know what? Just stay strong, you guys. Keep plowing forward.
Yep, that's exactly the best advice. We're going to do another kind of fun thing just before I sign off. And that is, we're going to talk about, we're going to honor someone special. Earlier this week, people were asked to nominate a player, volunteer, coach, fan, or official in the Ringette community to be recognized during our See What She Can Do moment. This, my friends, is Lori Blackburn. Lori is the manager for St. Mary's Ringette Association. She was nominated by Kristen Graham, and here's a great quote from Kristen in her nomination of Lori. Lori always goes above and beyond to help things run smoothly, taking care of extra things so I can focus on being a coach to all the amazing kids. Not only is she a rock star manager, she is also on the executive board of our association and continues to be a rock star there. She always says teamwork makes the dream work, but it's pretty easy when you have someone leading the way with such compassion and knowing she always has your back and the kids' best interests at heart. Couldn't do any of it without her. End quote. Lori, congratulations. Thank you for all of your hard work. It is truly inspirational. And if you out there would like to nominate someone for a See What She Can Do moment, just visit at Ringette Ontario or at See What She Can Do on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram for more information. You know what, everybody? This has been a fantastic episode of Team Talk. I want you to make sure that you join us on April 8th for the final episode in this Team Talk this season. It's going to be featuring the co-founders of See What She Can Do and our sponsors, Tina Finelli and Caroline Wiley. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. I'm PJ Kwong. Bye for now.